delighted to have you on the show, Nyimpini. You said you would love to talk about mindset.
30 years of research to understand what differentiates those who become very successful.
And that is the growth mindset, this belief that it is possible to learn.
For me personally, it's what has worked in my career. We box ourselves and say, you need to be a chartered accountant to be a CFO. You need to throw yourself out there and be vulnerable and let people teach you new tricks. And where you need help, put up your hand.
What you really embody is this humility to know what you don't know, and then the confidence to know that you will be able to learn it. Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club. I'm your host, John Bradshaw, and we've got a great show for you today. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter at www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za to be the first to hear about interviews, reviews, and get discounts on all the books we cover, courtesy of exclusive books. And now for our show. It is my great honor to welcome Nyimpini Mabunda to the show today. I've known Nyimpini a long time now, since he was at Vodacom. He is a respected author, CEO, and non-executive. In fact, a very hard man to put in a box. If you read his book, it seemed like he always wanted to be a CEO. He worked up through P&G in Diageo, Ugandan breweries. There was a season there. Into Vodacom, then was CEO of GE. Now he's author, speaker, coach, advisor, podcaster, investor, non-exec director, dreamer. There was a stint at Nando's and BCG somewhere in there as well. But as you can see, Nyimpini does not fit into one box, but he's a ball of infectious energy. He's an avid reader, and so delighted to have you on the show, Nyimpini.
Thank you so much, John. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. Well, when we were asking about what book you would cover, I see we've got your battered version here. You said you would love to talk about Mindset by Carol Dweck. And I was so excited to do that because this is a book that really affected how I think about the world as well. So really looking forward to that discussion. Where were you in your journey when you first read this book?
I just joined GE actually, 2020. So the version you see here was gifted to me in 2019 by a good friend, and typical at that time I was busy writing Take Charge, so I didn't get to read it. But then in 2020, I think somewhere around September, I joined GE as a CEO, and my welcome gift from Larry Kapp, the global CEO, was this book, which he had signed and he bought for the top 200 executives.
Oh, wow.
And when something comes from the boss, then you better look at it. So that was now my second.
Which lines must I?
So I've got 2 copies of this book, right? The first one I kept for a year, and then when the second one came from Larry, I said, okay, fine, this will be a career limiting move not to read it. But I've since read the book over and over again, because I mean, it was quite an interesting coincidence. The lady who gifted me is a good friend. It's just actually my PR manager. And then she was just like, and I'd engaged her for to drive my brand, my personal brand, ahead of the launch of Take Charge.
Yes.
And then just to say thank you for business, we've worked well together. Read this book, and then Larry Kapp sent me another copy, and that's really what sort of compelled me to read it.
Yeah, it's CEOs need to be careful gifting books, because everyone reads the book to say, which person do you think I am? Right.
Exactly.
But for those of our listeners who haven't read the book, do you mind giving, what is the major thesis of the book that Dweck is what is the point she's trying to bring across?
I think, firstly, Dr. Dweck approaches this from a research point of view, 30 years of observing and talking to people, just to understand what differentiates those who become very successful or not. And I think what she argues is that the expansive mindset, or what she calls the growth mindset, which is not having those self-limiting behaviors and boxing yourself around, I'm an architect or I'm a chartered accountant, and then your scores, your IQ as well as your performance in those defines who you are. And she's saying that even if you don't have those titles or you haven't been successful, which she calls a fixed mindset, you can still learn and bounce back and become bigger. And that in many ways has appealed to me, because what I've seen in my own career, and I write about this in my own book, Take Charge, is I think I'd become better, much better, the older I became. If you go and look at my primary school performance taken academically, it was quite poor. I went to high school, went from below average to average, and then went to university, and I actually went into upper second. And I think I started to really excel in many things that I've done once I started working. And interestingly, when I look back to understand why that is that the way of teaching and learning at work actually appeals to me a lot more than I was taught at school. Because one, I learned by observation, and I also learned by doing. But the academic system, certainly in high school, did not give me that opportunity. So you would have dismissed me long time ago as someone with potential who could even become CEO one day if you only looked purely at my academics. And she gives this grade 6 experience of hers where kids were even seated in a classroom based on their IQ.
Yeah.
And I would have been back of the classroom. And had I believed that that's all I'm capable of, I would never have made it in life. So where I really came alive for me, and there's this 70-30, 70-20-10 principle of learning, where 70% is on the job, 20% is through your supervisor and coaching and mentorship or line manager, and then 10% is actually through academics. Those of us who go into MBAs and corporate and whatever. I learn a lot by doing. And in fact, in hindsight, I should have gone to technical colleges and stuff like that. And so I relate to that because I never gave up on myself. I never dismissed what I'm capable of based on that. But actually, I've learned so much more. And if I look at what has happened to my career, I've worked in consumer goods, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in infrastructure, led people from sales and marketing to like architects, to actuarial scientists and chartered accountants and engineers in GE. So for instance, GE hires is one of the biggest employers of engineers in the world, and Vodacom was one of the biggest employers of actuaries. In the financial services team were working with me, and I was never intimidated by that because whatever challenge came my way, I opened up and learned about it.
Well, you were confident that you would be able to learn. And I think that's what strikes me. I'm really surprised that you read the book so late because having read Take Charge, it does feel that throughout your life, you've had a belief that you're improvable.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the growth mindset, this belief that it is possible to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful. You talk a little bit about in your book about the feedback.
Yes.
And it feels like I feel the same. I was very lucky early in my career to work with people who were great at giving feedback.
So one of the stories I tell, John, which is quite incredible for me, and I think that's where the switch happened, and I adopted this mindset before I even read the book, was I studied psychology, and that's my junior degree. And then I did my postgrad in marketing.
Yes.
Right. So 4 years, 3 years psychology, and then 1 year marketing. Then I applied for graduate placement program. And one of the companies that appealed to me is Procter & Gamble. And of course, what do you want to do? I'm applying for number 1, marketing manager, and number 2, sales manager. Yeah. I get to the interview. The finance director tries to convince me to move to finance and said, you'll be fantastic in finance. Like, have you looked at my CV or even my results? There's no accounting there. There's no finance management. What the heck, so to speak.
He was just desperate.
And they were like, no, you'll do very well. Don't worry about what you studied, because here we come and we train you. You can learn finance, but it is your mindset and your personality and the structured way in which you think. And it's your problem solving. Yes. So the spreadsheets that we use and all of that, doesn't matter. I didn't do that at varsity. Yeah. We will teach you. And then later, and I talk about this in some of my keynotes, we box ourselves and say, you need to be a chartered accountant to be a CFO. And that's conventional wisdom, right? You've got the current CEO of MTN, Group CEO of MTN, Ralph Mopita. Before the current role, Ralph was the CFO of MTN. He's not a CA.
Yeah,
he's an engineer. and he did quite well. So this is the kind of thing, and I say to some of the students as I talk about who are struggling to find jobs, and I encourage them to reskill and repurpose. And I said, well, one of the biggest banks in Africa is not run by a banker; it's run by a lawyer, Sim Chavala.
Yeah,
he came from a law firm, and then he learned what he knows about banking throughout his career. Even talk about he started in CIB, and later in years, when it was clear, and he had a conversation with his boss, Yako Marie, at the time, to say, look, I would love to run the bank one day. And Yako said, well, you need to go and learn retail. And at that point, he took a step back from Exco, took a demotion to go and run South Africa retail in service of his career, and now he's a group CEO. And if you look at how Standard Bank has done the last decades under Sim's leadership, he's not a banker.
It's incredible. And I wonder if these outsiders, or the people who don't come up through the functional channel, have an advantage in that they know they have to learn.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the people who come up through the channel are nervous about showing that they don't know everything.
Yes.
Right? Whereas when you come in from the outside, when you went to
you're open to be vulnerable. You ask the questions, and in asking those stupid questions, you discover something new. You also look around the world, and maybe because what you've learned before coming into that role, it's a bit different to some of your contemporary counterparts. Perhaps you're bringing in some innovation, because innovation happens when you mix up what is unexpected. You bring in different influence, and you become the contrast. And for me personally, what Dr. Dweck talks about is what has worked in my career.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a bit of an outsider in a situation where I find myself. And by being proud and accepting of who I am and how I think, and getting vulnerable, but also learning fast the technical things that I needed to learn, I brought something different, and I became successful. But I think there's a catch to that where, you need to be self-aware. And where you need help, put up your hand. So what I've been very good at over the years is to make sure that I've got a team that also balances me on some of my derailers. It's very important to make sure that you've got that support,
Yeah.
But look, the other thing that this book appeals to, as I've said earlier, is I've studied psychology, and it's described as the study of human behavior. So I'm very fascinated. Like you, I spent the earlier part of my career in marketing, and one of the things that always fascinated me about marketing is consumer insights.
Yes.
Why do people behave the way that they do? Why do they really do that? And in trying to unpack that, so anything with behavioral science in it, as these days they call it, becomes very interesting. Human beings are complex.
Human beings are complex, and I think what's interesting is you've got to be careful about simplifying it all down to whether it's growth or fixed mindset.
Yes.
But it does seem so powerful in the number of elements of one's life it influences. One of the points Dr. Dweck makes is how you respond to setbacks.
Yes.
Because if you have a growth mindset, the setback is the opportunity to learn. If you have a fixed mindset, a setback is proof of your inability to perform the function.
Yeah.
And you're very honest and take charge about your early P&G setback. And
yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how that hit you, and how, because of your inherent growth mindset, even though you may not have the words for it yet, how that was a real inflection point in your journey?
Yeah, I think the gift about feedback is that it's an opportunity to reflect. And I think I learned very early through my training as a graduate at P&G that on how to deal with feedback, and also how to toughen up and receive things that you don't want to hear. But more importantly, it's the actions that you take after you've been given that feedback. So it was a gift for me, because I was going nowhere. I started working very early. I was 19. I joined P&G in sales. The first day I arrived, I remember very well, 15th of January, 1996. I get a brand new, beautiful Jetta, Volkswagen, petrol car.
You're in Joburg.
I'm in
right?
Joburg, the bright lights. I've arrived, right? I don't even have rental because I'm staying with my uncle. You know, so lots of money in the pocket, car, and I just forgot to work. I thought I'd done the work coming here, and the work has been to
You've
pass at
arrived
university.
now,
You know,
yeah.
I've arrived, you know. And yeah, so, you know, at P&G we had 6 months performance reviews, but also ongoing feedback. And you were very clear about what you needed to achieve. In sales, it's easy. You know, it's your market share, it's your volume targets, and then is the way that your outlets are looking. You come from retail, you know, so when my bosses go to then Pick and Pay Boxback, the hypermarket, when Pampers is not on display, that's me. You know, when it's not selling, that's me. So
like,
very clear.
when
You
did you
can't,
last see
hide.
Nyimpini?
And it's like, when did he come here? You know, what has he sold? You know, out of stocks and all of that. So it was fact-based. It was fair. And that's another thing, you know, about feedback. Sometimes we play victim and not internalize it. But I've learned to say that actually it comes from a good place. And yeah, so I could see that it was derailing my career, and I had to make some changes. And that's the tough part, because in wanting to improve, something has to give. You know, so I had to stop certain behaviors. I had to go out less often. I had to cancel, as they call it these days, some of my friends. And I had to refocus my energy. And the good thing is that when I made that change, where my mindset was like, I can now grow, I need to invest in this, I've got this, and I saw my results improving. And then, as I say in my book, 6 months later, only 6 months, that I was back on the career trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like I certainly am very conscious that without any of my own doing, I got this gift somewhere of a growth mindset, maybe through the way my parents raised me. You also seem to have been given that gift. But I know you have done a bit of coaching through your career. I'm sure some of the people you've coaching have more fixed mindset type thing. So when you're mentoring or coaching someone with a more fixed mindset, seems like quite a hard thing you need a growth mindset to change from a fixed to a growth mindset. So it's quite hard to get that started. What is your experience or advice of working with people who find themselves with a fixed mindset?
I typically take them out of the work environment, because I think people will tell you that, you know, I've only worked for state-owned organizations. I would not survive in the private sector. Or they tell you that, you know, I understand this industry, I wouldn't do that there. And then when you take them out of the work environment, you know, and what I tend to get is people who are technical in nature or coming from financial services, and they say, well, I want to grow in my career, but now I'm supposed to serve customers, I'm supposed to manage stakeholders, I'm supposed to sell. I can't sell. And I said, oh, okay, so tell me how you got a job that you have currently. And then if you have a partner, you're married, how did you do that? You know, tell me that. And it's like, tell me how that is not sales, you know, because it's about understanding the consumer, repackaging your proposition to add value to the customer or consumer. You know, so it's almost like having a coaching conversation to first give people the belief that they've got it. And then when they start realizing where they've gotten out of the comfort zone and they've done it, then you can put some of the actual tools to help them do that. But I think a lot of us have it in us. We just don't realize it.
Yeah, and if what I'm playing back to you, it's people who might have a fixed mindset in their career, right? If you point to other aspects of their life, you find places where they already have the growth
mindset, exactly.
And that they're able to grow. Just as you were saying, I can't do sales. I heard Dr. Dweck say, yet, in my mind. That's what she loves to add. And I'm annoying to my children because whatever they can't do is yet. And then I get the eye roll. But it's so powerful to just, even when you're talking about yourself, to be like, I don't sing well yet. Right? That if I could sing better, I might not ever become world-class, but I could definitely become a better singer and better at nearly anything by focused practice.
And you know, John, it's never been more important than the current environment we're at. I think there's, I've read a couple of times people saying that the changes we've seen in the world in the last 10 years have been bigger than the previous 50. You know, so when we talk about the accelerated change in geopolitics, in climate change, in AI, in the generational mix, especially with Gen Zs and so on. Wherever you look, you know, we're going to have electric vehicles, decarbonization, Gen Z leading us, AI, and we have to learn things that we haven't been taught before, and for us to lead in that world. And I like giving the example that I've had the good fortune of doing my MBA at UCT back in 2004, 2003. Back then, I was not taught anything to do with ESG, definitely not AI. And we didn't go much into how the world is connected through geopolitics. But that was training for me to be a senior business leader. And without these three, understanding geopolitics, ESG, and AI, I cannot lead successfully today. So where did I learn it?
Yeah.
You know, and how did I become conversant? And so you need to throw yourself out there and be vulnerable and let people teach you new tricks. You know, because if you don't know digital today, which we learned in the analog years, you can't survive.
But even what it is today is different to what it was yesterday.
Exactly.
And, I mean, there's a thing that I try to do with myself, and I try to do with anyone I hire or promote.
Yeah.
Is I try to set them free by saying, I don't believe you currently know how to do this job.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you think you know how to do your job, even if you've been doing the job 3 years, the job changes so much. You do not know how to do the job.
Yeah.
But why I'm hiring you is I believe you can learn what you need to learn in order to do this job. It's almost what undoes the Peters principle. This idea that you get promoted to your level of incompetence.
Yeah.
Well, that is true.
Yes, it is.
But your job is to learn how to do the job, to learn how to become incompetent quick enough so that your incompetence doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And I'm so aware in the new roles that I'm in now, I'm in a learning role.
Yes.
Like if I think I understand, it's probably because I don't understand yet. And I don't even realize I don't understand.
And I think the trick to that, though, is to realize that what you know already, the skill you have, not necessarily the qualification you have, it's actually a good foundation to build on.
Yes,
so it's not all lost, but it's actually a great foundation to be agile and add into, and it allows you to learn the new stuff quicker. So for me, when people ask me and say, well, how are you leading in the, say, insurance industry when you come from a consumer goods? I was like, but the two are not necessarily that different, you know? And even when I moved to Vodacom from Diageo, I mean, on the one hand, I'm selling physical bottles of drinks, but on the other time, you know, now it's airtime and data.
Yes.
But actually, it's the same value chain. It's redistributed, and then it goes to the consumer, and the consumer needs to be happy with the experience. So I think sometimes we have the attitude of thinking that things are more complex or different than they really are.
And I see two mistakes to make.
Yeah.
Exactly the mistake you talk about, that it's too complex.
Yes.
The other mistake that I've certainly seen people come into companies saying, I already understand it all.
Yes.
Right? So it's almost that humility to say,
Yeah.
Your first act is humility.
Yes.
To learn and to grow and to understand. And if you arrive with humility, you're able to see, but I have some learnings that wouldn't have occurred to the team here because they've stayed in the silo. Yeah. And I've seen how Ugandan breweries work. Yeah. And I can bring that to telecom or to heavy industry. I think that's fantastic.
I think on that, though, and it's a good point to make, because I remember when I left consumer goods industry, I worked 5 years at P&G and 15 years in Diageo. Then I joined Vodacom. And I was there for 3 years. And I think at the end of my time at Vodacom, then I was appointed to a board of a beverage company. And I was so excited because what I learned at Vodacom was almost like in the digital space. I was saying to myself, had I known this while I was in FMCG, I would have smashed that job even more. Yes. Because now I had a combination of consumer and digital.
And the digital side. Yeah.
And now going back to FMCG in a capacity of a non-executive director, I was able to add so much value in terms of what FMCG companies can be if they understood digital, which most of them didn't at the time. And that's partly the reason why a lot are going through this struggle now. And I know you may have read about Pepsi having done a deal with NVIDIA and Microsoft, I think. and they're doing the whole reimagination of Pepsi's business from a data and digital first. You know,
but that meandering, I think you're a richer executive for the movement, for the different perspectives you get, as long as you're able to keep learning and keep
exactly
and keep growing
and then reapplying like that. Yeah.
I just want to pick up something you mentioned earlier. You said you surround yourself with teams that, I think the word you said, you were your biggest derailers or your biggest, I think in your book you talk about this personal board of directors.
Yes, it is.
Can you talk a little bit about this intentional team that you've built to keep you on the straight and narrow?
Yeah. I mean, so one of my favorite bosses and those that have managed me, I've had fantastic bosses in my career, has been Charles Mead. He was the CEO of East African Breweries and Diageo Company. When I ran Uganda Breweries, I reported to him. And I remember him saying to me in one of our coaching conversations, it's like, Nyimpini, you don't have to be good in everything. It's like, actually, that's a lot of work. You know, and actually when you good in many things, it doesn't even really get recognized because good is like
you just like vanilla.
You just like vanilla there, right? But he says, but you need to be exceptional in some things, you know. And it's like there's gotta be 2 or 3 things that you're famous for, that people know that only you can do, or you know, you are the default, they come to you for. And that's what you get promoted for, and that's what you grow. Because I think for a long time, and there's been debates in books around it to say, do you focus on getting better at your weaknesses, or do you leverage your strengths?
Like really take the spikes,
you know, and you just go with it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a believer in the spikes, and then just go and become like world class in it, because you really can. But you cannot ignore the things that you're not so good at, right? So you need to be up a level where they will not become a liability.
Yes.
But more importantly, if some of those for the role that you're doing actually needs to be higher than the baseline, then hire the people that are balancing you in that. You know, so for me, one of the biggest gifts I've had in my career very early on is the self-awareness. It's the ability to really take a critical look at myself and do the assessments, understand who I am, and then what makes me tick, and what, at my best, what conditions needs to exist for me to deliver my best work. And then what are some of the things that in my pursuit of success can trip me?
Yes.
And I learned that very early. So like, for example, I mean, I remember when I was appointed CEO in Uganda Breweries, it's like, well, commercial, I'm very strong. You know, I built my career in strategy, in sales and marketing. And that is, so commercial solutions and selling and coming, I knew that very well. Now I'm a CEO for a business that has supply chain manufacturing in Uganda. We've got 3 plants. I'm not a supply chain person.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I would not operate a brewery. And yet a supply chain person reports to me.
Yes.
And then the second thing is a CFO. As much as I understand the numbers and the balance sheets and everything, technically, I would not tell you back then how to optimize cash flow and stuff like that, because that's not what I studied.
Calculate the deferred tax.
Or how to understand why I have a tax assessment and stuff like that, right? Or even knowing the back pocketers of what the CFOs hide, you know, or how to effectively, without help, deal with the auditors that have come in and say that we found this and that we're not happy. Yet I needed to inspire the CFO, manage them, and then challenge them. So I knew that those 2 are the gaps. And when I went to Uganda Breweries, I actually got the CFO of South Africa, Diageo, and then I got a supply chain director of the Netherlands to be my coaches in those 2 functions. And before I even met my CFO in Uganda, I was like, I'll meet with Martin Cromat, he won't mind me saying. I said, Martin, so what questions should I ask my CFO to know if there's anything that is hiding? So it'll give me cheat sheet, you know, and then I'll also, my supply chain director will say something that maybe I didn't understand so well, and then I'll go back to Hank, who was the supply chain director in Amsterdam, coming from Heineken, and say, Hank, this is the thing. And then they'll even go to a point of helping me say what questions to ask when you meet with your direct report. So that is the active help I was getting, because I knew that, you know, supply and finance and supply includes procurement. Those two are so critical to a business but I wasn't confident in my ability to get it. But if you actually don't get a good handle of it, you can lose a lot of money in the business.
Yes.
You know, and I actively sought help on that. So imagine if I pretended that I've got this. I would not have been able to harvest some of the low-hanging fruits that I harvested in the business. And actually, we ended up doing so well. I managed to get more capex invested. I managed to get the plant improved. I managed to get our gross margins to go up by 8 points, and so on and so forth. But because I threw myself into that, and I can tell you now, my understanding of those two areas today it's 10 times, if not 15 times better, because I threw myself into it.
It feels to me what you really embody is this humility to know what you don't know, and so that you can go learn, and then the confidence to know that you will be able to learn it. And it's that blending of humility and confidence which I think has allowed you to have such great success across all these different verticals, and you continue to have great success. We have flown through our time, Nyimpini, so wonderful to chat. If you want to hear more, Nyimpini, Take Charge is a brilliant book. It's the story up to a few years ago, full of really practical advice as well as Nyimpini's story. And then you should check out CEO Nights, Nyimpini's brilliant podcast where he interviews CEOs and hears about their story. Nyimpini, thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you on the Nonfiction Book Club.
No, thank you so much. Time flies when you're having fun, but thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Remember to sign up to our newsletter at www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za. And until next time, happy reading.